The crowd's jeers stung like nettles as Olivia Anderson stumbled toward the white clapboard church, her shoulders hunched beneath the weight of their judgment. Whispers of harlot and Jezebel swirled around her like dust devils on the prairie, each word a lash against her already wounded spirit. The year was 1875, and in the small town of Copper Creek, Colorado, a woman with a ruined reputation might as well be dead. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as Sheriff Jenkins gripped her elbow, marching her forward. Her white dress meant for another kind of ceremony entirely dragged in the dirt. The man waiting at the altar, Mr. Garrett, a widower 30 years her senior with wandering hands and whiskey breath, stood with a self-satisfied smile beneath his gray mustache. "Keep walking, Miss Anderson," Sheriff Jenkins muttered. "You'll be Mrs. Garrett before sundown, or you'll be on the first train east with nothing but the clothes on your back." Olivia's chest tightened. She hadn't done what they accused her of, hadn't compromised her virtue with young Timothy Wells. She'd simply been caught helping him read his letters from back east, sitting too close on her father's porch after dark. But Timothy had fled rather than face the consequences, and her father, deep in debt to Mr. Garrett, had seized the opportunity to settle his accounts by offering his daughter instead. The church loomed closer, its shadow stretching across the dusty street. Olivia's feet grew heavier with each step. 20 years old, and her life was ending before it had truly begun. A commotion from the edge of town drew everyone's attention. The thundering of hooves grew louder as a paint stallion galloped down the main street, its rider a tall figure in a worn leather duster. The horse slid to a stop between Olivia and the church steps, sending a cloud of dust billowing around them. "Miss Anderson," the rider said, tipping his hat back to reveal piercing blue eyes beneath a shock of sun-bleached hair. "I believe you're needed elsewhere." Sheriff Jenkins reached for his pistol. "Colton Vance, this isn't your affair. Stand down." Colton's expression remained impassive as he extended his hand toward Olivia. "Madam, I'm offering you a choice. It's yours to make." Time seemed to freeze as Olivia stared up at him. She knew Colton only by reputation, a skilled horseman who worked at the Collins Ranch outside of town, quiet and hardworking, with no family ties in Copper Creek. She'd seen him occasionally at the general store, always polite but distant. Behind her, Mr. Garrett bellowed, "She's promised to me." Edgar Anderson gave his word. The decision crystallized in an instant. Olivia reached up and clasped Colton's calloused hand. With surprising gentleness, he pulled her onto the horse behind him. "Hold tight," he murmured, and before anyone could react, they were galloping away, the shouts of the townspeople fading behind them. Olivia clung to Colton's waist, the wind whipping tears from her eyes. They rode hard until the town was nothing but a smudge on the horizon. Only then did Colton slow the horse to a walk, guiding them toward a creek sheltered by cottonwoods. As they dismounted, reality crashed over Olivia. "What have I done?" she whispered, sinking to her knees beside the creek. "They'll come after us." "My father, they won't find us tonight," Colton said, unsaddling his horse. "We're headed to my friend's homestead about 20 miles north. We can rest there while you decide what you want to do." Olivia looked up at him, bewildered. "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." Colton's jaw tightened as he knelt to fill his canteen. "I know enough. I know what it's like to be forced into something you didn't choose." He offered her the water, "and I couldn't stand by watching it happen to someone else." As Olivia drank, she studied him. He was older than her, perhaps 25, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of long days under the sun. There was a stillness about him that seemed at odds with his impulsive rescue. "Thank you," she said finally, "but I have nothing to offer in return." "I'm not asking for anything." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. "Except maybe that you tell me the truth. Did you do what they're saying?" Olivia shook her head, feeling a flare of indignation. "No, Timothy was learning to read and I was helping him with his letters. His mother is ill back east and he wanted to write to her. That's all." Colton nodded as if he'd expected as much. "People see what they want to see. Come on, we should keep moving." They rode through the afternoon, the land opening up around them, rolling hills giving way to patches of pine forest as they climbed in elevation. Olivia's white dress was dirty and torn at the hem now, hardly the pristine symbol of purity it was meant to be. Her hair had come loose from its pins, falling in auburn waves down her back. "We'll be there soon," Colton said as the sun began to set. "My friend Daniel homesteaded this area a few years back. He and his wife Mary are good people." "Will they turn us in?" Olivia asked, fear edging her voice. "No," Colton said with certainty. Daniel was a Union soldier. He has little patience for men who'd force a woman into marriage. The homestead appeared as twilight descended, a sturdy log cabin with smoke curling from the chimney, a barn and fenced fields where cattle grazed. A woman emerged as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "Colton Vance, is that you causing trouble again?" she called, but her tone was warm. "Evening, Mary," Colton replied as he helped Olivia dismount. "This is Miss Olivia Anderson. She needs a place to stay for a bit." Mary's eyes took in Olivia's disheveled wedding dress, and understanding dawned on her face. "Well, you've come to the right place, dear. Come inside, supper's nearly ready, and I've got some clothes that might fit you better than that dress." Inside, the cabin was warm and welcoming. Daniel, a broad-shouldered man with a thick beard, greeted them with handshakes and no questions. Their two young children watched Olivia with wide eyes until Mary shooed them to wash up for supper. In Mary's bedroom, Olivia changed into a borrowed calico dress. "Your husband doesn't mind you taking in strangers?" she asked as Mary helped her with the buttons. "Daniel and I owe Colton our lives," Mary replied. "Our first winter here, a blizzard trapped us with dwindling supplies. Colton rode through that storm with medicine for our boy who had pneumonia." She smoothed Olivia's hair back. "If Colton Vance vouches for you, that's good enough for us." Over a simple dinner of venison stew and cornbread, Daniel finally asked, "So what's your plan, Colton? Sheriff Jenkins isn't known for letting things go." Colton glanced at Olivia. "That depends on Miss Anderson. My sister lives in Denver. She could stay there until she decides what she wants." "I have an aunt in San Francisco," Olivia said slowly. "She's written many times asking me to visit. I could go there." Daniel nodded. "Train from Denver would get you most of the way." "But it'll take money." "I have some saved," Colton said. "It would cover the fare." Olivia shook her head. "I can't take your savings." "Consider it a loan," Colton replied. "You can repay me when you're settled." After supper, while Mary put the children to bed, Daniel rolled out a map on the table. "There'll be search parties. Garrett has enough pull to make sure of that. You should avoid the main roads to Denver." They planned a route that would take them through the mountains, adding days to their journey but keeping them away from towns where news might have spread. Olivia listened, a strange mix of terror and exhilaration coursing through her. She'd never been more than 10 miles from Copper Creek in her life. That night, Olivia slept in the children's room while Colton took the barn. She lay awake for hours, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the homestead and wondering what kind of life awaited her. For the first time, her future was entirely her own, a thought both thrilling and frightening. Morning came with a flurry of activity. Mary packed them food and insisted Olivia take a second dress and some necessities. Daniel gave Colton a rifle and extra ammunition. "The mountains are beautiful this time of year," Mary said as she hugged Olivia goodbye, "but they're not forgiving. Stay close to Colton, he knows the land better than most." As they rode away, Olivia looked back at the little homestead, committing to memory the kindness of strangers. "Will we reach Denver by nightfall?" Colton laughed, the sound unexpected from such a serious man. "Not even close. It's a 4-day ride if we push hard, longer with the route we're taking. We'll be camping under the stars, Miss Anderson." Olivia's cheeks flushed. She'd never spent a night outdoors in her life. "Oh, don't worry," he said, noticing her discomfort. "I'll be a perfect gentleman." The first day of travel took them through gentle foothills that gradually gave way to steeper terrain. Colton was quiet for the most part, pointing out landmarks or wildlife occasionally. By midday, Olivia's muscles ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle. "We'll stop here for a bit," Colton said, guiding them to a small clearing beside a stream. "Horse needs rest, and so do you." While Colton tended to the stallion, Olivia stretched her legs, wincing at the soreness. She watched him move with easy efficiency, checking the horse's hooves, adjusting the saddle, murmuring softly to the animal. "What's his name?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "Valor," Colton replied, patting the horse's neck. Raised him from a colt. He's beautiful. Olivia hesitantly reached out to stroke the horse's nose. I've always been a bit afraid of horses, they're so large. They're good judges of character, Colton said. Valor wouldn't have let you on his back if he didn't trust you. Olivia smiled, oddly touched by this statement. How did you know? Yesterday, I mean. How did you know what was happening at the church? Colton's expression darkened. Small towns have big mouths. I was at the livery when I overheard the blacksmith talking about how Edgar Anderson had finally found a way to settle his debts. He busied himself with checking their supplies. It wasn't right. No, it wasn't, Olivia agreed softly, but most people would have looked the other way. I'm not most people. He handed her some jerky and dried fruit from their provisions. Eat something. We've got a long way to go before we make camp. They continued their journey through the afternoon, the trail growing steeper and narrower. Valor picked his way carefully through rocky passages, sometimes forcing them to dismount and lead him through particularly difficult sections. By the time the sun began to set, they had climbed high enough that Olivia could look back and see for miles rolling hills and forests stretching toward the horizon. Colton found a sheltered spot to make camp, a small plateau bordered by pines with a view of the valley below. He worked efficiently, setting up a small fire and showing Olivia how to arrange pine boughs for a softer sleeping surface. It's not a feather bed, he said, but it'll keep you off the cold ground. As darkness fell, they sat beside the fire eating Mary's bread and jerky. Stars emerged overhead, more than Olivia had ever seen, blanketing the sky in glittering light. It's like diamonds, she whispered, gazing upward. Colton followed her gaze. City lights drown them out. Out here, you see what's really there all along. Something in his tone made Olivia look at him. The firelight cast shadows across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the thoughtful set of his mouth. Have you always lived in Colorado? She asked. Since I was 16, he replied. Came west from Virginia after the war. My father died at Gettysburg, and there wasn't much left for us back home. Us, my mother, my sister Elizabeth, and me. Mother passed 3 winters ago. Elizabeth married a shopkeeper in Denver. He added a branch to the fire. What about you? Your family always been in Copper Creek? Olivia nodded. My mother died when I was 12. Consumption. It's just been my father and me since then. She pulled her borrowed shawl tighter around her shoulders. He wasn't always like this, so willing to trade me away. The drought hit his farm hard these past 2 years. That doesn't excuse it, Colton said firmly. No, Olivia agreed. It doesn't. They fell silent, the crackling of the fire and distant call of an owl the only sounds. Eventually, Colton stood. You should get some sleep. I'll take first watch. Watch for what? Olivia asked, suddenly nervous. Mostly for peace of mind, he assured her. Bears sometimes wander through, but they'll avoid the fire. I'll wake you if there's any trouble. Olivia settled onto her pine bough bed, using her folded shawl as a pillow. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. She watched Colton's silhouette against the starry sky as he sat at the edge of their camp, rifle across his knees. Colton, she called softly. He turned. Yes, thank you, not just for yesterday, but for all of this. He nodded once, then turned back to his vigil. Olivia closed her eyes, lulled by the gentle sounds of the wilderness and the knowledge that, for now at least, she was safe. The next day brought steady rain, forcing them to travel under the constant drip of water through the pine canopy. Colton gave Olivia his duster, but by midday they were both soaked through. The trail turned muddy and treacherous in places, slowing their progress considerably. There's an old line shack about 3 miles ahead, Colton said as thunder rumbled in the distance. Used by shepherders in the summer months, should be empty this time of year. The abandoned shack was little more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was dry. A small stone fireplace occupied one wall, and Colton immediately set about building a fire while Olivia wrung water from her hair and skirts. Your clothes need to dry, he said matter-of-factly. You'll catch your death otherwise. He rummaged in his saddlebags and pulled out a spare shirt and trousers. These will be too big, but they're dry. I'll wait outside while you change. Olivia blushed furiously but took the offered clothing. Once alone, she peeled off her sodden dress and undergarments, hanging them near the growing fire before quickly donning Colton's clothes. The shirt fell almost to her knees, the sleeves extending well past her fingertips. She rolled them up as best she could and cinched the trousers with a piece of rope. "You can come back in," she called, feeling strangely vulnerable. Colton entered, his own clothes plastered to his frame. He stopped short when he saw her, something unreadable flashing in his eyes before he looked away. "You should change too," Olivia said, turning to give him privacy. "I won't look." She heard the rustle of fabric behind her and concentrated fiercely on the patterns of light the fire cast on the rough wooden walls. After several minutes, Colton cleared his throat. "All decent," he said. When she turned, he was wearing his other set of clothes, hanging his wet ones beside hers near the fire. "I'll see what I can find for dinner." He returned shortly with a rabbit he'd snared. Olivia watched with fascination as he skillfully cleaned and prepared it, setting it to roast over the fire on a makeshift spit. "Where did you learn to do all this?" she asked. "Hunting, making fires, surviving out here. Some from my father before the war," he said, "the rest from necessity. When we first came west, I worked as a guide for a while. You learn quickly or you don't last." As they ate the simple meal, the storm intensified outside, rain hammering the roof and wind howling through cracks in the walls. Lightning illuminated the small space in brief, brilliant flashes. "Looks like we'll be here till morning," Colton observed. "Storm like this makes the trails too dangerous, especially in the dark." Olivia nodded, trying to hide her nervousness at the prospect of spending the night in such close quarters. The shack had no bed, just the hard-packed dirt floor. "Tell me about your aunt in San Francisco," Colton said, clearly attempting to distract her from the storm. "What's she like?" "Aunt Josephine is my mother's sister," Olivia replied, grateful for the conversation. "She married a sea captain who made his fortune in the China trade." Her letters are full of descriptions of San Francisco, the Bay, the ships from all over the world, the mix of people there. She smiled at the memory. "She's always begging me to visit, says a young woman with education could find good opportunities there." Education. "My mother was a school teacher before she married. She taught me everything she knew: literature, mathematics, even some Latin. I was teaching the younger children in Copper Creek until she stopped, pain flashing across her face. "Until what?" Colton prompted gently. "Until Mr. Garrett decided he wanted me for his wife. He told the town council it wasn't proper for an unmarried woman to be teaching children." Her hands clenched in her lap. "That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've been trapped in my father's house while he arranged the marriage." Colton's expression hardened. "Garrett sounds like a man who's used to getting his way." "He owns half the businesses in town," Olivia confirmed, "including the bank that holds my father's mortgage." She looked down at her borrowed clothes. "What about you?" "What will you do after you've delivered me to Denver?" "Head back to the Collins Ranch, I suppose," he said with a shrug. "Though I might need to find work elsewhere if Sheriff Jenkins holds a grudge." Guilt washed over Olivia. "I've ruined your life." "No," he said firmly, "you haven't. I made my choice, same as you made yours." Thunder crashed directly overhead, making Olivia jump. Without thinking, she moved closer to Colton, their shoulders almost touching as they sat beside the fire. "Sorry," she murmured, embarrassed by her reaction. "No need to apologize," he said softly. Storms can be frightening. They stayed like that, side by side in companionable silence until the fire began to die down. Colton added more wood, then arranged his saddle and blanket to create a makeshift pillow and bed. "You should get some sleep," he said. "Take the blanket." "I'll be fine with my coat." "We could share the blanket," Olivia suggested, then immediately flushed at the impropriety of her words. "I mean, it's cold," and Colton's expression remained neutral, but she noticed the slight tension in his shoulders. "That wouldn't be proper, Miss Anderson." "I think we left proper behind in Copper Creek," she said with a small smile. "And please call me Olivia." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "All right, Olivia." They arranged themselves on either side of the fire, the blanket spread between them. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, Olivia found herself drifting off to the sound of rain on the roof and Colton's steady breathing nearby. She woke sometime in the night, the fire reduced to embers. a chill pervading the small space. Without conscious thought, she moved closer to the warmth radiating from Colton's sleeping form. He stirred as she approached, eyes opening. "Cold," she whispered by way of explanation. He lifted his arm, allowing her to nestle against his side, then draped it protectively around her shoulders. "Better? Yes," she murmured, her cheek resting against the solid plane of his chest. She could hear his heartbeat strong and slightly faster than normal. "Thank you." Neither of them spoke of this arrangement when morning came, but something had shifted between them, a growing awareness, a tentative connection built on shared experience and mutual respect. The storm had passed, leaving the forest washed clean and glistening in the morning light. Their clothes were dry, if somewhat stiff, and Olivia changed back into her dress while Colton checked on Valor. "We should reach the main trail to Denver by nightfall," Colton said as they set out. "From there, it's another day's ride to the city." The terrain gradually became less rugged as they descended from the mountains, the trail widening enough that they could ride side by side in places. Olivia found herself opening up more, telling Colton about her dreams of perhaps becoming a proper teacher someday, or maybe even a writer. He listened attentively, offering encouragement without judgment. "What about you?" she asked. "What dreams do you have?" Colton was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "I've been saving to buy some land, nothing big, just enough for a small ranch of my own. Somewhere peaceful." "That sounds lovely," Olivia said sincerely. "Will you raise horses? Some cattle, too?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Been dreaming about it for 5 years now. Another year or two and I might have enough saved." Olivia felt a pang at the thought that her rescue might have cost him some of those savings. "I promise I'll repay you for the train fare, as soon as I find work in San Francisco." "Don't worry about that now," Colton said. "Let's just get you safely to Denver first." They made camp that night by a clear stream, the distant lights of a small settlement visible far below them. After dinner, Colton taught Olivia how to identify some of the stars and constellations overhead, knowledge he'd gained during his time as a guide. "That one's the North Star," he explained, pointing. "If you're ever lost, find it and you'll always know which way is north." "I feel lost even knowing which way is north," Olivia admitted. "Everything I've ever known is behind me and I have no idea what's ahead." Colton studied her face in the firelight. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No," she said firmly. "I'd rather face the unknown than be trapped in a life I didn't choose." She drew her knees up to her chest. "But it's still frightening." "Courage isn't about not being afraid," Colton said. "It's about being afraid and moving forward anyway." "Is that what you did when you came west?" He nodded. "After the war, Virginia didn't feel like home anymore. Too many ghosts. Coming west was terrifying, but staying would have been worse. And now, do you regret it?" "Not for a moment." His gaze held hers across the flames. "Especially not now." The simple statement sent warmth flooding through Olivia that had nothing to do with the fire. They continued talking late into the night, sharing stories from their childhoods, their hopes, their disappointments. When they finally settled down to sleep, Olivia found herself again gravitating toward Colton's warmth, and this time, neither of them pretended it was only about the cold. Dawn brought them to the main trail to Denver, wider and more traveled than the mountain paths they'd been following. Colton grew more vigilant, scanning the horizon frequently and keeping them at a distance from other travelers. "We're not out of danger yet," he cautioned. "Word travels fast even out here." His caution proved warranted when, around midday, they spotted a group of riders approaching from the direction of Denver. Colton quickly guided them off the trail and into a stand of trees, watching intently as the riders passed. "Sheriff's deputies," he murmured, recognizing the badges on their vests. "They're looking for us." Olivia's heart raced. How could they know we're headed this way?" "Garrett has connections and money." Colton's expression was grim. "We'll have to avoid the main trail from here on." "It'll add time, but it's safer." They cut cross-country, following game trails and dried creek beds, keeping the distant spires of mountains to their left as a guide. The going was slower, and by sunset, they were still a good distance from the city. "We'll have to spend another night on the trail," Colton said, finding a sheltered hollow for their camp. Tomorrow we'll circle around and approach Denver from the north instead of the west. As they settled in for the night, Olivia sensed a new tension in Colton. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Besides the deputies, I mean," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm worried about what happens when we reach Denver. My sister will help you, I know that." But he stopped, seemingly struggling with his words. "But what?" "But I find I'm not ready to say goodbye," he admitted quietly. Olivia's breath caught. "I'm not either." Colton moved closer, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "This is madness, we barely know each other." "And yet I feel I've known you all my life," Olivia whispered. "Is that madness too?" Instead of answering, Colton leaned forward and kissed her, a gentle touch that quickly deepened as Olivia responded. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected this," he said hoarsely. "When I rode into Copper Creek that day, I only thought to help someone in trouble. I never imagined." "Neither did I," Olivia replied, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, "but I'm glad for it, whatever happens next." They spent the night in each other's arms, exchanging soft words and tender touches, discovering each other beneath the canopy of stars. By morning, whatever uncertainty had existed between them was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty that transcended their brief acquaintance. As they packed up camp, Colton suddenly stilled, his head cocked to one side. "Riders," he said tersely. "Coming fast." Before they could mount Valor, 5 men on horseback crested the hill above their position. Olivia recognized Sheriff Jenkins at their head, with Mr. Garrett riding beside him. The other 3 were deputies, all armed. "There they are," Garrett shouted, pointing. Colton pushed Olivia behind him, his hand going to the rifle strapped to his saddle. "Stay back," he warned the approaching men. "We don't want trouble." "You stole my bride, Vance," Garrett snarled, his face mottled with rage. "That's trouble enough." Sheriff Jenkins raised a hand to quiet Garrett. "Colton Vance, you're under arrest for kidnapping and theft of property. The girl comes back with us." "I'm not property," Olivia said, stepping out from behind Colton. "And I wasn't kidnapped. I left of my own free will." "Your father signed a marriage contract," Jenkins replied impassively. "In the eyes of the law, that makes you Mr. Garrett's responsibility." "That's not how the law works, and you know it," Colton countered. "A woman can't be traded like cattle." Jenkins dismounted, his hand resting on his pistol. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Vance. Hand her over and maybe the judge will be lenient." Colton's stance remained firm. "She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go." The standoff stretched, tension crackling in the air. Olivia glanced at Valor, calculating whether they could mount and escape, but the deputies had spread out, blocking any obvious route. Suddenly, the sound of more hoofbeats approached from the east. All heads turned to see a group of riders coming toward them, 3 men in the distinctive blue uniforms of the U.S. Cavalry, led by an officer with captain's bars on his shoulders. "What's going on here?" the captain demanded as they drew near. Sheriff Jenkins straightened. "Official county business, Captain, apprehending a kidnapper." The captain surveyed the scene, his gaze lingering on Olivia in her simple dress and Colton's protective stance. "Is that so, madam? Were you kidnapped?" "No, sir," Olivia replied firmly. "I left Copper Creek voluntarily. These men are trying to force me to marry against my will." The captain dismounted, approaching Sheriff Jenkins. "I know you, Jenkins. You have no jurisdiction this far east of your county line." "We're in pursuit of criminals," Jenkins argued. The law allows many things, but forcing a woman into marriage isn't one of them," the captain interrupted. "My men and I are escorting a payroll to Fort Collins. We'd be happy to have these folks accompany us the rest of the way to Denver." Garrett surged forward on his horse. "Now see here, that woman is promised to me. I have a contract with her father. Unless the lady signed it herself, that contract isn't worth the paper it's written on," the captain replied coolly. "Not in this territory." A tense silence followed. Finally, Jenkins holstered his weapon. "Garrett, there's nothing more we can do here. The Army's made its position clear." "This isn't over," Garrett snarled, glaring at Colton and Olivia. "Not by a long shot." As the sheriff's party reluctantly departed, the captain turned to Colton. "Friend of Daniel Wilson, aren't you? He served under me during the war." Colton nodded, relief evident on his face. "Yes, sir." He mentioned you'd taken a commission out west after Appomattox. Best decision I ever made, the captain smiled. Daniel sent a rider to Fort Collins 2 days ago, said you might need assistance. Seems he was right. With the cavalry as escorts, the remainder of the journey to Denver passed without incident. The captain, true to his word, saw them safely to the city limits before continuing north with the payroll. Elizabeth Vance's reaction to her brother arriving with a young woman in tow was a mixture of surprise and knowing amusement. After hearing their story, she insisted Olivia stay with her and her husband for as long as necessary. The train to San Francisco leaves twice weekly, Elizabeth explained over dinner in her comfortable home. The next one departs in 3 days. Olivia nodded, though the prospect of continuing her journey alone suddenly seemed less appealing than it had before. Later that evening, as they walked through Elizabeth's garden, Colton took Olivia's hands in his. "I've been thinking," he said hesitantly, "about your plans." "As have I," Olivia replied. "I'm not sure San Francisco is where I need to be anymore." Hope flickered in Colton's eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that sometimes the path we think we're meant to follow changes when we least expect it." She squeezed his hands. "These past days with you have changed everything for me." "For me too," Colton admitted. "I've never met anyone like you, Olivia." "Your courage, your spirit," he took a deep breath. "I know it's fast, probably too fast, but I don't want to lose you." "Then don't," she said simply. "Ask me to stay." "Stay," he whispered, "not just in Colorado, but with me." "I know I don't have much to offer yet." Olivia silenced him with a kiss. "You offered me freedom when no one else would. You offered me kindness when I needed it most. That's worth more than land or money or anything else." In the gathering twilight of Elizabeth's garden, they made plans for a future neither had imagined just days before. Colton would continue working at the Collins Ranch, where Olivia could teach the ranchers' children. They would save together for their own land, building a life step by step. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony at Daniel and Mary's homestead, with Captain Wilson making a special trip to stand as witness. Olivia wore a dress of pale blue instead of white, a symbol of the new beginning rather than the false purity Copper Creek had tried to force upon her. News eventually reached them that Edgar Anderson had lost his farm to Garrett, who in turn had fallen on hard times when several of his business ventures failed simultaneously. The town of Copper Creek, like so many others in the West, gradually faded as the railroad bypassed it for more promising locations. 5 years after their hasty escape, Colton and Olivia Vance finally purchased their own ranch, a modest spread with good water and enough pasture for a small herd of cattle, and the horses Colton had begun breeding. They built a sturdy house with a wide porch and windows that faced the mountains. On clear days, Olivia would sit there with their 2 young children, teaching them their letters and telling them stories of courage and unexpected journeys. Valor, now retired from hard riding, grazed contentedly in the meadow below the house. Sometimes, when the children were asleep and the night was still, Colton and Olivia would sit together on the porch, looking up at the stars that had witnessed their beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" Colton asked one such evening, his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Taking my hand that day? Riding away from everything you knew?" Olivia leaned her head against him, contemplating the life they'd built together, the home filled with books and laughter, the land that sustained them, the love that had grown from a moment of courage into something enduring and true. "Never," she replied, turning to kiss him softly. "Some journeys are meant to be taken, no matter how frightening they seem at the start. I'm just grateful you were there to help me find my way." As night deepened around their mountain home, they remained together on the porch, 2 people who had defied convention and circumstance to forge their own path, not eastward toward the rising sun, nor westward toward the setting one, but forward into a future of their own making.